Hey, Civ 6 came out but I didn't get it because they had the audacity to charge money for it, and I eat potatoes I find in the mud across the road. But the mentions of Civ reminded me of something I often thought about when comparing it to Total War, and since I don't have a video to release today, here's some minutes of me talking about that thing of which I thought. There's something that Civ games do that Total War games don't, or don't anymore you could argue, that I believe is a central factor to the popularity of the Civ franchise. I'd like to highlight this and highlight why Total War doesn't exploit that factor as much as it could and suffers because of it. So in an elevator pitch, where you have 30 seconds to describe the design of a Civ game versus a Total War game, you might be led to believe that Total War is the superior product. Both are turn-based grand strategy games, Civ casting the net wide, Total War deep, but Total War also has its signature real-time battle system that demolishes the dice roll non-gameplay of Civ's war mechanics. Yet for a host of reasons and details of the design, Civ games are idolised as the pinnacle of the genre, always getting massive hype, sales and review scores, despite, in my opinion, being very uninnovative and lacking creativity in their mechanics. Total War still does well. Okay, maybe not Rome 2, but still not quite to the same degree despite being way more complicated games to design and program and having more advanced graphics, and for all the complaints regarding pricing, often being cheaper than entries in the Civ series, although I'm willing to accept that Total War's DLC policy might be more harsh than Civ's. I haven't played the Civ DLC, so I can't really say otherwise. Now, there are a million reasons why Civ comes out on top, of course, and I wish to avoid a 7-hour rant here, so I'm focusing on the one thing I always think about when Civ is brought up, the famous one more turn gameplay. Why is Civ so fun that it's actually hard to stop playing at any point in the campaign, start to finish? Why is it literally addictive? The reason, in simple terms, has got to be this. You are rewarded for ending the turn. It's as simple as that, and I'd like to argue that this is a hugely fundamental piece of turn-based game design that Total War has lost sight of. Allow me to be more specific. In Civ, you have a number of different things that you're monitoring turn to turn. The population of each city, the construction of buildings and units in each city, the movement of exploring units revealing more of the unknown map, the progress towards the next tech, and various other bits and bobs like money, culture points, golden age points, and just miscellaneous numbers that count down or up to something good happening. All this going on means you're always close to another milestone. You're always close to progressing the game, always on the cusp of gaining new powers, new opportunities, a bigger empire. Everything the game encourages you to do is always being achieved by thousands of tiny advances towards a half dozen interlinked goals. And how do you get those advances? You end the turn. You just keep playing and good things will happen immediately. Your empire will improve, numbers go up. And every time numbers tick up and you feel good about it, you see that the next thing is about to happen as well, and you want to keep the high by pushing on to see that in the next turn too. And that's all it is really. It's just a layering of loads of reward systems that all together result in the player being rewarded in some way pretty much constantly, and making sure that the player's various plans are constantly advancing. And to make sure that high can last the whole campaign, the game has plenty of things to reward you for clicking on. There are dozens of buildings you can build in every single settlement, all different while providing tangible benefits, often in the ever addictive form of making the other reward cycles run faster, like building a lab in a settlement in order to get more research points. Every settlement has a separate population level that makes the city run faster as it grows, and every one of the myriad technologies unlocks something, provides a substantial bonus, or unlocks new game-changing technologies that you can't wait to get. As far as I recall, in Civ 5, which I've been playing, all of the techs, about 99% of them, always unlock at least one new building or unit. So you always get something new to play with every time you get a tech, and you're going to be getting a tech pretty regularly, like around every 10 turns something new is introduced to the game, and that's going to happen throughout the entire campaign right up to the end. Your civilization is always improving. There's loads of different ways every single turn to do that. That's the source of Civ's power. The fact there isn't much else to do in the game apart from just hitting the end turn button and watching numbers and bars increase barely matters, because watching those numbers is enough for most people. So then of course, I wish to contrast this with Total War. If you play a game of Total War Warhammer, you might at first detect some kind of similar layered reward system in place. You can build things, you can research things, you have some kind of population measure as well, and you have money, army experience, mission objectives, counting conquests, that kind of thing. But critically, it's not set up so that you're always monitoring developments in each of these fields simultaneously, and that you're always about to reach an interesting milestone in at least one of them at any point in the campaign. So take buildings for example. You'll quickly find the number of buildings you can make can be counted on your hands if you discount the fact that upgraded versions of the same building are given different names in most cases. But the length of a campaign is going to be 1 or 2 orders of magnitude longer than the time needed to build everything in the game. Not that you can, of course, because of the second limitation, which is that you can only put a couple of buildings in each town. In what can only be presumed to be an effort to keep things simple and accessible, the building system is inactive for most of the game, not providing the player with rewards or meaningful rewards, as you might be building something you don't need just because the opportunity is there. You're not advancing the power of your empire much through this system. It doesn't constantly produce fun, like the far more expansive and complex, yet still apparently perfectly acceptable Civ building system. So what about tech? There's enough tech for most factions that you can spend the whole game researching things, but it falls down at actual impact. A lot of the techs are non-essential incremental improvements. So, in short, waiting for 8 turns to get plus 2% battle run speed, or minus 3% upkeep for troops with 1 leg born on a Tuesday, it's just not all that inspiring, it's not all that fun. But waiting for 8 turns to be the first Civ with railroads, a massive advantage that in Total War terms is like having a tech that gives you plus 200% campaign movement range for all units. Now that's the kind of thing I'd click end turn to see. So do you see what I mean here? Civ has way more techs that matter, changing the game entirely. They give you tangibly more power than you had before the tech arrived, especially with, as I mentioned earlier, the fact you're always unlocking new things to use. And Total War generally doesn't, with the notable exception, of course, of Fire by Rank in Empire. Literally the one tech that matters in the Total War universe. Nothing is the same once you have Fire by Rank. Warhammer's probably the worst defender for limp techs anyway, off the top of my head. Lots of little things that you're ever so slightly happy about getting every 10 turns, but they don't really promise any future fun, with the exception of a unit unlock perhaps. The same insignificant argument applies to the post-medieval 2 population systems as well. They just don't matter. Most of the time there's no point in monitoring your population level, and the game doesn't make a big deal of it anyway. It's there, but it isn't generating rewards, it isn't generating fun on a turn-by-turn basis. In Total War then, it's really meant to be the military strategy that generates the fun. You're meant to want to end the turn so that your conquest of the next region will be completed, that kind of thing. It certainly can work, but it's less immediate and lacks the critical layering of rewards to make sure that when one milestone is reached, you have milestones concerning a different gameplay element about to come to fruition so you can continue on to those ones. So say, once you finish conquering your neighbour, you notice you're about to get a tech that unlocks bridge forts, so enemies will have to besiege bridges before they can cross them. Awesome. And then you reach diplomacy level 4 with another neighbour that lets you recruit units from their faction into your army. You've got to check that out. And then your public order maxes out in one of your settlements, triggering a huge festival in your name that gives extra experience points to all your units or something. Got to see how they do in the next battle, right? And then your temple research chain completes studies of an ancient treasure that your explorers found, which lets you construct a building of your choice for free in your capital, so you choose the 11th thing in the list, Statue of the Ranger. This makes all the swamps in your land deal quadruple attrition to your enemies and none to your allies, and you know the enemy has to walk through that swamp to get to you, and you can't wait to see them take that extreme damage thanks to your ploy. And then look, an enemy army back there in that place you conquered earlier. It's time for another battle in which I can test out those newly leveled up units. Well look, now that the swordsmen are level 5, they can use shield wall, and my handgun has unlocked volley fire. Gotta try that out, been looking forward to seeing it. And then it looks like the population just leveled up in this other settlement, giving me the option of adding new farms or leveling up the local road. loads. Definitely need to get that done ASAP. Oh, and now my total faction population is large enough for me to dictate trade terms with plus 50% chance of success. I should start seeing how that affects things. Oh look, an enemy army just got near to the Swamp of Death. Yes, and now my governor just learned a skill that lets me stop public order decrease for 5 turns in exchange for a large decrease at the end. Nice, I can use that to stop this rebellion over here. I'm glad that was a useful game-changing skill and not just 1% income from culture buildings, whatever they are, etc. Total War suddenly has some of that, but Civ has loads of that. It's that, and only that process for the whole damn game. A constant rush of new things, and things that aren't actually all that interesting, but seem interesting because of the significant effect on the system of numbers and moving bars you're addicted to staring at. Hopefully I've made my point about all this now. That's all I really wanted to say, but I'll make a quick addendum to note that in the old games, like Rome 1 and Medieval 2 and even Empire and Napoleon, you have building systems that fit the bill a little better. Loads and loads of things to build in every single settlement. The effects aren't always that important, but even then it's still fun to be constantly improving the settlements. At least that's what I anecdotally think playing them now alongside the newer games. And of course, in Rome 2 and Attila's duo, buildings actually punish you alongside the rewards as part of an arbitrary economic balancing act intended to add some level of strategy to building choices. But the punishments made it not fun, so I'm very glad that they did away with that. Now keep going in that direction and put the strategy back, but with everything you can do being fun. Oh yeah. Well okay, I think that's the end of this edition of Backseat Game Design Rant Show. Any thoughts, etc. on my assessment? Is the Civ formula of more buildings, more metrics that always increase, more progression milestones, meaningful results to milestones, is that a formula that explains the franchise's success, and by its omission in recent Total War games, explains their decreased addictiveness? It seems like it to me. Alright then, back to playing goddamn Mountain Blade Warband then. Don't even get me started on how many little numbers there are for you to constantly increase in that game. Also, on a semi-related note, the nominations for the 2016 Total War Mod Awards happen to be open right now, so if you've got a favourite mod or a mod you can't live without that was made or was substantially updated in the last year, you can use the link in the description to nominate it for an award. I nominated Chaos Divided for Total War Warhammer, a mod that adds tons of units to the Chaos campaign. You have so many units that you actually get the effects described in this rant. Since you basically always have new units being unlocked that you haven't used yet or just sitting in your army ready to use, you want to push on to try them out. And then once you've done that, you'll probably just unlock even more units to try. It's the start of a beautiful new world for that Chaos campaign, which otherwise fails the Civilization formula worse than most Total War experiences. Anyway, just wanted to bring that up, so have a look at that. Peace and /all war out, y'all.